All right, welcome back to the deep dive. You guys have really been sending in some fascinating stuff lately, and today we're diving into a topic that's been making waves. Argentina, under its new president, Javier Milei, seems like everyone's talking about it.
Yeah, it's definitely a significant shift for Argentina. A lot of changes happening fast. And the sources you sent, well, they really highlight these changes, especially the impact on the people and the influence, maybe, from the U.S.
Yeah, and that's exactly why we're here. We want to break it all down, understand what these sources are saying about these new policies, especially for everyday Argentinians, and how the U.S. might be involved. We've got articles, reports, opinions, the whole nine yards. So let's jump in.
Sounds good. I'm ready when you are.
So first things first, Milei. Huge shift since he became president. It's like the country's taken a whole new direction.
Yeah, you could say that. The sources definitely emphasize this move towards, closer ties with the U.S. And they point to these economic policies that Milei is implementing. Like, remember, dollarization. That's a big one.
Right, dollarization. Argentina ditching its own currency and adopting the U.S. dollar. But why? I mean, what's the logic behind such a drastic move?
Well, on the surface, it's about stabilizing the economy. Argentina's had its share of economic woes, inflation being a big one. So the idea is that by using the dollar, they can control inflation, create some stability, attract foreign investment.
But the sources we have, they paint a different picture, don't they? It's not as simple as just fixing the economy.
Yeah, they go deeper. They suggest that dollarization is about much more than just economic stability. They see it as a way for the U.S. to exert its influence, to essentially control Argentina's economy. They talk about it as like a form of economic colonization.
Colonization, that's a pretty strong word.
It is, but they argue that by giving up control of its currency, Argentina becomes dependent on the U.S. They're at the mercy of U.S. monetary policy, which might not always be in Argentina's best interest.
And this idea of dependency plays out in other ways too, right? Like with the influx of European immigrants.
Exactly. That's another major point the sources bring up. They argue that Milei's policies are actively encouraging European immigration. Now, on the surface, it might seem like a good thing, bring in skilled workers, boost the economy, but the sources suggest a darker motive.
Which is?
Well, they say it's about displacing native Argentinians, replacing them with Europeans who are, let's say, more aligned with U.S. interests. And they point to specific examples of how this is happening.
Like what? Give me some specifics.
Okay, so take housing, for instance. The influx of Europeans, many of whom come with significant resources, is driving up housing costs. Locals are getting priced out of their own neighborhoods. Same thing with jobs. Increased competition, wages stagnating or even decreasing. It's creating a lot of tension.
So it's like the Europeans are being given preferential treatment.
That's what the sources suggest. They talk about tax breaks for foreign investors, easier access to capital, even better housing opportunities. It creates this system where the newcomers, the Europeans, are favored, while native Argentinians are left struggling.
And this, they say, is all part of a larger plan orchestrated by the U.S. to essentially take control of Argentina.
Right. It's about integrating Argentina into the U.S. economic sphere. They call it a neo-colonial strategy, where Argentina becomes a source of cheap labor, resources, a market for U.S. goods, all while its own people are pushed aside.
And they see Milei as what? The willing pawn in this scheme.
Yeah, pretty much. They argue that he's enacting policies that are detrimental to Argentina's long-term interests, all to appease the U.S. and its corporate allies. They paint a pretty bleak picture, to be honest.
That's a lot to take in, for sure. And it raises some really important questions, like, what does this mean for national sovereignty in the 21st century? If a country can be so easily manipulated, its economy controlled by a foreign power, where does that leave its people? What does that say about their future?
Huge questions. And the sources don't necessarily provide all the answers, but they definitely force us to think about these issues, to question the narratives we're being fed. It's about looking beyond the surface and asking who benefits from these policies, who pays the price.
Absolutely. We need to be critical, to examine the motives, the power dynamics at play. And that's what we try to do here on The Deep Dive. To unpack these complex issues, provide you with different perspectives, and encourage you to think for yourselves.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So to our listeners, keep those questions coming. Keep digging. And remember, sometimes the most important truths are the ones that are the hardest to face.
Well said. Until next time.
Thanks for joining us.